What is up, Gig Nation? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be looking at some claims I've been seeing out there by other YouTubers about Uber Eats customers tip baiting. Now, I felt the need to address these claims because, quite frankly, I think that there is a lot of misinformation out there. So first, to kind of clear this up, let's take a look at where exactly tip baiting comes from. Tip baiting within the gig economy originated on the Instacart platform, and this started happening earlier in the pandemic. Essentially, what happened was a ton of new Instacart customers started using the platform. There was a huge demand and not enough Instacart shoppers to fulfill all of that demand. So customers were sitting and waiting around for hours at a time, sometimes days, in order to get their batch filled. And this is when savvy customers started to realize that they could leave a huge tip on an order. They could say they were tipping $20, $30, sometimes even more, to try and get a shopper to pick up their batch faster. And then after that batch got delivered, they could then remove that tip, and the shopper would end up getting paid a whole lot less than they thought they were going to get paid. This was incredibly unfair to Instacart shoppers and left a lot of them losing money, and ultimately Instacart had to change the platform. They had to change the way that tipping could be removed after an order, and they had to reduce the amount by which customers could actually change that tip. And I believe it ended up somewhere around 50% reduction limitations so that customers could not remove that full tip. And Uber Eats recently changed their tipping policy to allow for customers to tip both up front and also after an order is delivered. And for Uber Eats drivers, this was good news because it turns out when a tip is prompted up front, customers are more likely to leave that tip. This resulted in an increase in tips for Uber drivers right around when the pandemic was hitting, right around when drivers needed that extra cash fast. And there's a lot of speculation that Uber might have actually reduced their base fares at the same time, so these increased tip amounts actually covered that up, but we're not going to go into that in today's video. I'll save that for another video. What I do want to do is clarify how exactly tip baiting relates to the Uber Eats platform and why Uber Eats drivers actually are not going to be affected by this. So I've had a lot of comments on my channel, a lot of the videos that I've done about Uber Eats. Some of my subscribers are commenting and saying that they haven't seen tips after orders. One of the reasons why they're saying this is because it can actually take hours before a customer tip is shown to you in the app. So that upfront estimate of a price for a delivery, it might look like $20, and then when you actually complete it, Uber Eats is going to show you $4, $5 payout because that $15 tip hasn't actually been registered yet. But that doesn't mean that the customer is not tipping you. A lot of times that just comes in later. So to actually know if you're getting all of your tips, you have to look back through the app 24 hours later and look at what the price Uber Eats estimated was and what they actually paid you. And I'm going to go through some of my older deliveries to show you guys this in a minute here, because this will go a long way to clarifying what's actually happening. It looks like some other YouTube content creators in the gig economy kind of jumped to conclusions here, thinking that tip baiting was happening on Uber Eats because likely some of their subscribers complained about it as well, and they hadn't actually done enough Uber Eats deliveries to know how this process works. So let's go ahead and look through some of these older deliveries that I've done, and as you can see, most of these are coming in at exactly what Uber Eats estimated them to be. Some of them are actually coming in above. Customers decided to go in and change their tips afterwards to give me more of a tip, maybe because I was fast with the delivery, maybe because the food was hot. For whatever reason, they just decided that they wanted to be even more generous afterwards. And over hundreds of deliveries on the Uber Eats app, I've had very few, maybe one or two, where a customer decided to remove that tip. So in the grand scheme of things, when you're looking at all the orders and the averages of what you're getting paid, you actually should not even be taking tip baiting into account. You should never be screening out high-paying orders because of the fact that a tip might get removed, unless of course that delivery is just really far away. And in that case, there might be other reasons why you don't want to take this order. Distance and the time to complete that offer are things to keep in mind. If something's really far away, you have to travel a long distance or out of your way, then the time it takes to complete that might end up being over an hour. So even if it's a $20 offer, are you really making that much more than your normal hourly wage? All things considered, I am glad that Uber Eats changed their tipping policy to allow for customer tips up front, creating higher tips for Uber Eats delivery drivers. I do think that they could implement some sort of standard so that customers can only reduce their tip by a certain amount like Instacart did, let's say 50%. But then again, Instacart was actually plagued with tip baiters to a much greater extent than what we're seeing on Uber Eats right now. So I don't actually think that they really need to make too many changes at all right now. And the last thing that I want to happen is for so many complaints and so much misinformation out there about tip baiting to happen to the extent where Uber Eats removes that upfront tipping ability of customers. Let me know what your thoughts are. If you've been tip baited before, leave a comment down below on the Uber Eats platform. Of course, we don't want to talk too much about Instacart here. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that like button. The idea here is just to get out the correct information so that people are informed when they're going to deliver with Uber Eats.